Some days start out calm, but end in a storm. This was one of those days. Evelyn Evie King, 74 years old, walked through the streets of Atlanta with the same steady pace she always did. Not too fast, not too slow, but with purpose. She didn't care for buses, and taxis were out of the question. Keep your legs moving, keep your head sharp, someone had told her long ago. She took that advice to heart. It had been a long day. Bureaucracy had tested her patience in the morning. Military pension paperwork tangled in so many layers of nonsense that even an experienced strategist like her struggled to cut through it. Then Miss Dorothy, her neighbor, had begged for help. Her TV antenna was broken, and the local repairman charged as if they were fixing a NASA satellite. A quick stop at the supermarket for coffee, fresh bread, and something for dinner. That was all she wanted. No surprises, no complications. But trouble was already waiting for her. The supermarket was crowded and noisy. People bustled through aisles, cashiers looked exhausted, and the security guard near the entrance looked like he might fall asleep on his feet. Evelyn made her way to the coffee section, picking her usual brand. Strong, black, no sugar, no cream. Just the way she liked it. She placed it in her basket and walked toward the checkout line. And then, something shifted. It started with a loud laugh. Then the unmistakable feeling of being watched. She didn't turn around. Instead, she glanced at the reflection in the glass doors of the refrigerated aisle. And there they were. 3 young men. They were standing near the entrance, laughing too loudly, moving with the kind of swagger that came from believing the world belonged to them. They were dressed in expensive sneakers and flashy hoodies, the kind of clothing meant to say, "Look at me, I'm somebody." She could hear snippets of their conversation. "Man, did you see how he ran? Dude folded like a lawn chair." This world is for people who take, not the ones who wait. Yeah, and you know what? People let it happen. Evelyn didn't turn. She had seen their kind before. Street kings, not gangsters, not real criminals, just loud, cocky kids who had never faced real consequences. She moved forward in line, and that's when they noticed her. "Hey, Grandma, how about letting the young blood go first?" She turned her head. The one who had spoken was tall, lean, and grinning. His 2 friends stood behind him, arms crossed, smirking. He was expecting something: fear, annoyance, submission. Instead, Evelyn just looked at him. "I got here first, I'm staying." The young man raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" His friends chuckled. "Ooh, looks like we got a rebel." She didn't react. She just watched him, and for some reason that bothered him. The line moved forward. The 3 young men didn't leave. "Yo, old lady, you know who runs this block?" Her gaze didn't waver. "You do?" He smirked, stepping closer. "Yeah, and you're acting real disrespectful right now." Evelyn let a pause settle between them before she spoke, her voice even. "I'm tired of boys pretending to be kings." His expression darkened. "The hell did you just say?" His friends weren't laughing anymore. She held his gaze, the same way she once looked at young soldiers who thought they knew everything. "I said you don't even know how wrong you are." Silence. Behind them, the supermarket buzzed with normal life. Cashiers counting change, customers loading bags, a distant announcement over the intercom about some discount on frozen meals. But in this small space, between her and these 3 boys, the air had changed. He opened his mouth, about to say something, but for some reason the words didn't come. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure he was in control, and soon he would find out why. "The hell did you just say?" The words came out sharp, almost instinctual, but there was something behind them. Hesitation. Evelyn could see it. He wasn't used to this. People like him. Kids who puffed out their chests and played tough. They weren't used to someone standing their ground. They expected fear, nervous laughter, maybe an apology. But all they got was a steady, unshaken stare. She had seen this before. New recruits, standing before their drill sergeant for the first time, realizing that bravado wasn't going to save them. But this was just a boy, playing a man's game. "I said," she repeated, her voice calm but unyielding, "you don't even know how wrong you are." Silence. It stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Kevin, because that was his name, wasn't it, glanced at his friends, looking for something. Reassurance. Confidence. He didn't find it. TJ, the one holding his phone, snickered, but his laughter sounded thinner now. "Man, what is she talking about?" She thinks she in a movie or something? Jordan, the quietest of the three, just shifted uncomfortably. But Kevin, he wasn't ready to back down. He couldn't. Not in front of them. So he did what all weak men do when their ego gets bruised. He got closer. You know what, Grandma? You got a real smart mouth for someone standing all alone. He was close now. Too close. He was taller than her, broader. But Evelyn didn't move an inch. She just looked up at him. And then, she did something that made his smirk falter. She smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an apologetic one. A knowing smile. The kind of smile that belonged to someone who had already won. And Kevin? He felt that. What's funny, old lady? Evelyn slowly raised a hand, adjusting the cuff of her coat. Tell me something, boy. Kevin blinked. Boy. She said it like she was speaking to a recruit, like she had already decided she was in charge. Have you ever heard of a brigadier general in the United States Army? TJ laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Oh, hell no. Is she about to give us a history lesson? But Kevin didn't laugh. Something about the way she said it, the way her voice didn't waver, the way she kept her eyes locked on his like she was reading right through him, made the air feel colder. What? Evelyn tilted her head slightly. I asked if you've ever heard of a brigadier general, and then, for the first time in this whole exchange, Kevin didn't know what to say. His throat felt dry. His brain tried to process what she was implying, what she was claiming. And then she did something that shattered whatever confidence he had left. She reached into her coat, not fast, not threatening, but with the kind of deliberate movement that made his whole body tense. And when her hand emerged, she wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding something small, metallic, old. A military dog tag. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't new. But it was real. Kevin felt his stomach drop as he read the engraving. B. Jenna, Evelyn King. His mouth went dry. Ain't no way. TJ leaned in, squinting at the tag. His face went from amused to confused in half a second. Jordan? Jordan took one full step back. And Evelyn? She just let the silence sit there. Let it sink into their bones. Let them realize what they had done. Because for the first time since they walked into this store, they weren't in control. She was. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that felt nothing like the cocky laughter from earlier. Kevin's eyes were locked on the dog tag in Evelyn's hand, the metal reflecting the fluorescent lights of the supermarket. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure what to do. TJ swallowed hard. Nah. This gotta be fake. You just carrying that around for show? Evelyn let out a quiet chuckle. Not amused, not angry, just patient. You think they hand these out like party favors, boy? Kevin's lips pressed into a thin line. He could feel the weight of his friend's eyes on him. He needed to say something. Anything. Okay, so what? You used to be in the army. Big deal. Evelyn's smile disappeared. I didn't used to be in the army, child. I commanded it. Kevin forced out a scoff, but there was something different now. He wasn't laughing with his chest anymore. Yeah, okay. You expect me to believe you were some big-shot general? Evelyn took a slow step forward. Not fast, not aggressive, but with purpose. Kevin took one step back, and Evelyn saw it. She felt it. The shift. The moment he realized that he had been talking to someone very different from what he assumed. And that was power. Her voice was calm when she spoke, but it cut through the air like a blade. You think war movies show you what it's like to be a soldier? You think you know something about power just because you push people around in a grocery store? She shook her head slowly, letting the moment breathe. I've given orders that have sent men into battle. I've trained soldiers who could hear your heartbeat in the dark. And you? You think standing in front of an old woman makes you a threat? The weight of her words pressed down on them. Jordan had already taken another step back. TJ looked between his friends, his nervous energy shifting. Kevin? Kevin was trying to hold on to something that was already slipping through his fingers. Yeah, well, whatever. That don't mean nothing now. You're just some old lady. Evelyn chuckled again, shaking her head. You keep telling yourself that, boy. Maybe one day you'll believe it. She turned slightly, making a move toward the cashier, and for a brief second, it looked like that was it, like she was just going to walk away. Like Kevin was about to get out of this moment without completely falling apart. And then, she looked back over her shoulder, just one glance. And with that one glance, she undid everything Kevin thought he knew. By the way, she said casually, adjusting the strap on her purse, I would have had you all crawling in the dirt before sunrise. Silence. Then something unexpected. TJ. It out a nervous chuckle, not because he thought it was funny, because he was genuinely terrified. And that was the final blow. Because Kevin knew, the second TJ laughed, it was over. He had lost. Kevin stood there, shoulders tense, hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He wanted to say something. He wanted to throw back an insult, reassert his dominance, regain whatever power he had lost in the last 5 minutes. But the words wouldn't come, because deep down, where his ego couldn't shield him, he knew he had already lost. TJ still had that nervous chuckle lingering in his throat, shifting from foot to foot like he wanted to be anywhere else. Jordan? He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest, his body leaning slightly away from Evelyn, like he wanted to disappear. And Evelyn? She was just standing there, not gloating, not smirking, just watching, like she had already moved past them. That stung. Kevin took a slow breath, forcing himself to straighten up. He had to save face, had to say something before this moment became permanent. You think you're all that just 'cause you were in the army? His voice lacked the confidence from earlier. Evelyn tilted her head slightly as if she were deciding whether or not to even bother responding. Then she gave a small shrug. No, I think I'm all that because I know exactly what kind of man you are. Kevin's jaw tightened. Yeah? And what kind of man is that? She didn't hesitate. The kind who talks too much and listens too little. The kind who thinks respect is something you demand instead of something you earn. The kind who only feels strong when he's standing over someone else. She let the words settle, her gaze unwavering. The kind that either grows up or gets left behind. Kevin blinked. For the first time, it wasn't just the fact that she had beaten him. It was the fact that she knew him, better than he knew himself. That was worse than the embarrassment, worse than the way TJ and Jordan were already pulling back, distancing themselves from him. It was the fact that she had seen right through him, and she wasn't even angry about it. She had already seen too many men like him, and none of them ended up where they thought they would. Kevin took a step back, then another. And just like that, it was over. He turned, muttering something under his breath that even he didn't believe, and pushed past his friends. TJ and Jordan followed without a word. Evelyn watched them go, her face unreadable. Then she turned back to the cashier, who had been frozen this whole time, eyes wide, completely unsure if she had just witnessed a confrontation or a miracle. Ma'am, she swallowed. That was... wow. I mean, were you really a general? Evelyn smiled. Sweetheart, if I weren't, do you think they'd be running right now? The cashier blinked, glancing back toward the entrance where the 3 boys had practically disappeared. She let out a breathless laugh, shaking her head. Guess not. Evelyn grabbed her bag, tucking the dog tag back beneath her coat. As she walked toward the exit, she heard the cashier call after her. Thank you for your service. Evelyn paused at the door. She glanced over her shoulder, a glimmer of something in her eyes. Always. And with that, she walked out. The air outside was cooler now, calm. The night was quiet, and as she made her way home, she couldn't help but smile, because she knew without a doubt that those boys, they would never forget her. And maybe, just maybe, one of them would finally start listening.